What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
I had no choice to reach out to Graham Wilson and connect with him and invite him to be a part of our show. And the reason why is because when I saw that not only was literally a global leadership consultant that really helps the people he worked with, the companies worked with, to achieve extraordinary results, he is a leadership wizard. And I saw that, and being a Harry Potter fan, I said, I have to meet this man. And based upon our conversation this morning, I'm sorry, Graham, you don't look like Dumbledore. But from our brief conversation, I really do believe you own the title leadership wizard. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mike. Great to be here. And I love talking about leadership. And I guess the story about leadership was this interesting story. I remember a few years ago saying to my clients, what is it I really do? And they talked about the fact that it is about awakening possibility. It's about helping them to deliver extraordinary results. And one of the clients, I said, "Oh, you're just like a leadership wizard," and it stuck really. So it was something that was given or gifted to me that stuck, and it sort of carried on really from there really. So but I see my purpose really around helping leaders to really explore today's world and think about what they need to do to be extraordinary in achieving their results, whether that's in work or at home as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had people ask me, Mike, do you have any magic dust you can come? I get these problems.
Yeah.
I got some magic dust you can sprinkle. And it's you and I were talking about your trip to Vegas. I mean, magic dust, when you talk about Vegas, has a bad context. So we won't go there.
Different context, maybe.
Yeah, very much so. But the reality, Graham, with you, there is some magic dust, I think, in your walk and what you teach. And the magic dust lies down to sort of some sound foundational principles of what it takes to drive forward to get extraordinary results out of the people that you work with. Well, what are some of the obstacles that you've seen as you interact with clients that stop them or that hinder them and slow them down to actually grow to be everything that they really aspire, would love to be, or capable of being?
I think the first thing really is around how they've been brought up and their education, and I often look back on my own personal education and again, well, it didn't really teach me really how to be a great leader in today's world. It taught me how to pass exams and be successful and get qualifications, but it didn't really teach me the essence of what real leadership is really about. And I'll give you an example of that really. If I go back to my education and I ask a lot of people this question, I say, well, if you were back at school and the teacher asked you a question, what would you do? And it's, well, if I knew the answer, I'd put my hand up, and then the teacher would then tell me whether right or wrong. And then I asked them, I said, well, what would happen in your school if as your teacher asks a question, you turn around and start to collaborate and have a conversation with your classmates? And they always say, oh, well, I probably would have been told off or sent to the headmaster or done something horrible to. And really, when you think about that, a lot of us were educated in an environment that says that teamworking and collaboration is cheating. And there's lots of examples of that, how we organize our organizations based on subject matter experts, and that's how we were taught at school. So I think the first thing that when we're working with leaders really is often it's about helping them to unlearn their early experiences and start to look at the context they're actually in today and start to relearn new ways of thinking, changing mindsets, different tools and techniques. And we all know in today's world that it's not possible to have all the answers as a leader. So we do need to collaborate. We do need to build our teams around us. So I think that's number one, really. And the second thing really was a lesson from my grandfather. My grandfather worked in the northwest of England in a city called Liverpool, and he worked on the docks in Liverpool, unloading and lots of tough work, and I guess you could say gang warfare sort of type stuff back in the day. And when he retired managing and leading one of the largest tobacco warehouses in the world, which is called Stanley Dock. And when he retired, I asked him about, well, how did you lead at a young age? How did you cope with this really tough and competitive environment? And he said, Graham, it's all about being real. The more real you are, the more believable you are, the more people will want to follow. So I think a lot of leadership development has to be around self-awareness, doesn't it, really? And starting with yourself and understanding who you really are, and then building that authentic brand, and not trying to be someone that you admire or someone you've seen, following someone else who managed you, but finding your way. And I think having that courage and that confidence to find your own way to lead in the context you're in is really important. And I guess the third thing, which is probably the relevant in today's world, is we live in a world that is so fast paced that when I grew up, my dad used to race motorbikes and my uncle used to race cars, and I used to listen to them as a young boy, aspirations of being a bike racer and car racer. But I managed to do the car racing, but not the bikes. My mum wouldn't let me do that. It's far too dangerous. But I used to listen to their stories. And what happened was really interesting, was that a pattern started to materialize through their conversations. And the pattern was always this, is that every time they lost a race was because they were going too fast. And that didn't compute at the time. I think 8 years old, it's all about going fast, surely. But obviously, you need to know when to go fast, but you also need to know when to slow down. So what I find in a business context in today's world, I think everyone's busy and they're operating at great pace, but they're quite often being busy or think they're being really efficient doing the wrong things. So I think for me, one of the things I learned from my dad and my uncle is that you can speed up by slowing down. And I think that's probably the third thing that we start getting leaders to stop and reflect for a moment and just get off a hamster wheel and think about who they are as a person. Have they developed their team? Have they worked with their team to create a plan? And are they driving for the right results and connecting all the dots and all those great leadership things? So I probably think they're the three things that will help leaders to stop and think about.
Yeah, I'm in awe of the fact that it seems to be a common theme based upon the last few interviews that I've had about this whole concept of slowing down so I can go faster. Because as leaders, it's like you, I didn't go to leadership school growing up. My leadership training was my forehead banging against the wall. I'm not going to do that again.
Absolutely.
But today there's more resources like these types of programs for people to be able to learn and grow. And what I'm hearing is that we have to reshift our definition of what we expect out of ourselves and what our people expect out of us as leaders, which
absolutely
what you were talking is that I'm hearing you say that we need to shift from driving results, which is of course what we're trying to do, but we drive results not by having all the answers.
Absolutely.
It's by collecting people around us that together we get the answers, which means a lot of times I got to step aside.
Absolutely.
What's the difficulty you've seen leaders have in doing that?
I think the trap is, isn't it, when leaders, I always think leadership is, we're all leaders regardless of our position.
That's right.
For me, the definition of leader is someone that someone wants to follow. So the only thing we're in control of is our behavior. The rest of it is about other people choosing, whether I want to follow you or not. And my background was military as well, so I think that was particularly relevant in that situation. So I think for me, the trap that we all fall into is that the stuff we talked about being back at school. That suddenly I become a manager or a leader, and now I'm the teacher, and the teacher always had the answers. So I must know all the answers, and I need to be able to tell people what the answers are. And we fall into that trap. I call it falling into what I call a hub leader, where you are the center, you are the font of all knowledge, and you wrap your team around you, and everything's great until you go on holiday and it all falls apart and it all goes horribly wrong. And then you're like, I can't go on holiday, because if I go on holiday, it all goes wrong. But even sometimes people like that, because they can then ride in on a horse and feel really valued and make it work. And you get that paternalistic sort of type style, don't you, of directive leadership. And the challenge of that, of course, is then the good people tend to leave, and the people who should leave probably stay. And you're not going to get to high performance in that way. It might work short term, and perhaps if you're working with people who are new or inexperienced or don't have the skill and knowledge to be successful in their roles. But I think you're right. My aspiration always when I'm developing leaders is I almost want to get them to create a situation where they're making themselves redundant from the day-to-day operations, and they're creating a self-managed team, which means they can step back, slow down to speed up. The phrase in the military, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I think that's quite relevant. And often people don't have enough time to do the things they should be doing because they're wrapped up in everyday operations and doing things and micromanaging and doing one-to-ones, appraisals, all that sort of stuff, which are important to do. But it's important to coach and develop your team. But if you're wrapped up in the day-to-day operations, you don't have the time to think and reflect and be more strategic in what you do. And that's particularly relevant when people move into more senior roles where they're paid to think. They're paid to make the right decisions. They're paid to look at a holistic approach to business, not just their technical expertise. So it becomes even more important as you progress through your career and move into a more senior role or into C-suite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but the challenge that I would think people would have is as I move and expand and I start scaling as a leader, then my day gets more full. My responsibilities get broader, and now I look at the calendar and there's no time, there's no breaks, there's nothing in there. So what advice can you give me as a leader that if I'm feeling just under the place of overwhelm, to be able to figure out what do I do to be able to drive things and be able to, especially if I'm trying to turn a ship or overcome some obstacle.
I think there's a common thing. Certainly, some of the leaders I would, I guess, are inspired by or would hold up there in high esteem, thinking, you got it right. Is they never seem to be busy. So that's something to think through. And I think they have that ability for clarity. I think as leaders, obviously, we need to be bold, we need to be courageous, but we also need to keep things really simple. So I think, for me, often when we're working with organizations, say, look, can you help us with time management or organizational effectiveness? And quite often, the route I go down is say, well, how do you really make decisions? And one of the questions I often ask leaders is, just tell me, the purpose of the business, the proposition of the business, the problems you solve for your customers, what your values are, what your strategy is. And I start to ask these questions, and quite often I draw a blank. And the next question after that sort of set questions around, well, how do you prioritize? How do you really know what you should be doing? So I think in this volatile world, this busy world we live in, and complex world, is simplicity is the key. So you've got to be really clear about what your purpose is. You've got to be really clear about what the values are. You've got to be really clear about what your goals are. And if you have those three things, you can then make any decision, can't you? It's, does it align to our purpose? Does it align to my values? Does it help me achieve my goals? And it's a yes and no situation. So what you can then do is then start to prioritize the things that are really important to do. And there's been loads of great stuff written about it in the past. But I think what happens is we just get caught up on this. I guess technology has disrupted the way we work, and it's very easy to put dates in people's diaries, isn't it? And other people managing your diary, whereas we never used to have that before. And people used to be polite before, didn't they? They used to ring you up and ask you, can I book you an appointment, or can I book this meeting? Whereas now it just gets dropped in, and thinking, where did that come from? So there is a readdress that needs to happen really around prioritization. And I guess if I take that to a strategic level, I often talk to senior leaders and talk about, well, on the white wall over there, can you write down and record all the transformational projects and programs and portfolio stuff you're actually doing to reconfigure your business to transform it to be what you want it to be in the future to achieve your aspirations? And they'll spend a good amount of time writing down all the stuff that they're doing. And I always make a joke of it, really. I always say, so that's a really fantastic 5-year plan. And I pause, and they all look at me and go, that's not a 5-year plan, Graham. That's this year's plan, And we can, wow, you're doing all of that transformation right now. I said, yeah, we're going to transform our business. It's going to be fantastic. And I said, well, just out of interest, yeah, how busy are your teams and your staff and your people at the moment doing stuff, their day job? And they go, well, they're really busy. Well, give me a percentage. And I'll say, well, 80, 90% or 100% sometimes. And I say, well, okay, well, so you're saying me your staff are 100% busy doing the day job, and I look at the wall and go, and now you're asking them to do that as well. How is that going to work? And quite often our work is around getting people just to stop for a moment and think, okay, well, what's realistic here? What can we do? And often less is more, isn't it? Do something less, but do it really well. And quite often we help organizations just to stop for a moment and reflect on what they're trying to do and keep it simple. And I always talk about the concept of one-page plans. And we talked before the session started about your passion around engagement and engaged people. And for me, engaged people, you've got to have that buy-in, haven't you? That clarity, and you've got to give meaning to the strategy. So you can create a complicated consultancy-based strategy with 80 pages that no one understands. That sounds good, okay, maybe okay for investors, but does that really engage my staff? So how do I communicate the strategy with meaning that people can buy into it and understand their role and understand the contribution they're making and actually want to be part of it and want to be part of something special and have that sense of pride. So I think there's lots of things we can do to make it a lot more effective. But I think the first thing really is around clarity. I mean, my first career was in the military, a decade in the military. I joined DuPont, as I was mentioned before the session started. And then I moved into consultancy and started Success Factory. And it was around that simplicity, around what do I want to do with the rest of my life. And I remember I sat on the beach and I had an A3 piece of paper, an A3 book, and I quite like doing sketching and mind maps and drawing. I thought, I wonder what a wonderful life looks like. And I just wrote down a wonderful life, living a wonderful life in the middle of the page, and then brainstormed really all the things that I felt would be a wonderful life for us and the family. And when I then reflected on it, I said, okay, well, that's got to be my starting point to create a business. So, in order to create that, what sort of business do I need to really create? And it sort of went from there. That was 30 odd years ago now. And we obviously created Success Factory based on that lifestyle aspiration. And the core of it, of course, was that that purpose, which was around how do we awaken possibility in leaders and teams to deliver extraordinary results when perhaps they've been taught the wrong way, or maybe the rules have changed. I don't know, but how do we help people do that? And that's really been our ethos ever since, really. And how do we do that whilst living a wonderful life?
Yeah,
so I think simplicity is key.
Yeah, and there's a key theme that seems to be working in our conversation right now, and that's the importance of, going back to this thing about slowing down, but it's the importance of the thought of reflection. It's the importance of being able to step back. What happens is, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or in the States. I don't know if it's different in Great Britain or not, but I know here in the States we have this work ethic type of thing that if I'm not moving things forward, then I'm not contributing. And the thought of sitting over here at my table and chair and wiping everything out and spending 30 or 45 minutes and just laying things out, or taking a couple of hours and sitting and spreading things out and reflecting and thinking about each individual member of my team is something that I think leaders have a tendency to squeeze in and do in between whenever they're not busy.
Yeah.
And
there is a theory, Mike. I mean, I hope I don't upset any people in the States, but there is a theory because a lot of people back in the day when they heard about this promised land were obviously from different countries from around the world, and they heard about this amazing opportunity to go and live out in the States. And well, obviously it wasn't called the States at the time, but this promised land, let's say. And the story in Liverpool is that it was all the extroverts that quickly thought about it and went and said yes. All the reflective people went, hang on, let me think about that. And they missed the boat. So there is a theory that maybe that's, I don't know whether that's true or not, but
I don't know. But the challenge we have is that when we measure, the reason engagement is so important to me, Graham, is that the latest Gallup poll that came out I saw shows that we're still at, matter of fact, it's dropping. The total workforce dropped from 34 to 32, and now it's down to 30%. And you would think that after we're past COVID, but that should be reversing itself, and it's not. It's actually worse. And so I'm going,
Yeah.
and we know that what happens is if I can have an engaged workforce, now what
Yeah.
happens is I can increase productivity. I can get results and without
Yeah.
having an engaged workforce.
Yeah.
But the engagement starts with the leader creating an environment where people feel a sense of value and clarity. You've used this word a couple of times, which
Yeah.
is my
Yeah.
word. I've spent the last year and
Yeah.
probably next year I'll spend most of my time on the word clarity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what I find leaders have a tendency to look at things and they want their people to see things through the same eyes that they have. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the reason why they're leaders is the other people haven't developed enough or don't have the same skill set.
Yeah.
And they need the leaders'
They do.
clarity
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
of highest priority. You've talked about that well, about
Yeah.
the highest
Yeah.
priority that's going to drive things forward.
I think you're right. Yeah, we talk a lot about empowerment, don't we? And empowering people, and empowering teams, and giving people autonomy. And I know Dan Pink did some great work, didn't he, about the extraordinary truth that motivates people around was it purpose, autonomy, and mastery? I think it was, and I totally agree with him around that. And yeah, I think for empowerment to truly happen, you've got to give direction. So I think sometimes, people saying, "Oh, you're empowered," but they're not empowered. They're abdicated to, and they just go up and they make a mistake and they become very disempowered very quickly because they haven't got that clarity of direction. In the military, they use a concept called mission command, which is, as a leader, your job is to share the mission. And then the teams are trained and well trained to be able to then work out how they then complete the mission. So you give them direction and the purpose, I guess, and the reason why, and then the teams go out there and make it happen. And I think that's exactly the same in business as well. We've got to give that direction because then we can give them the autonomy as long as you've got the skill and knowledge to do that, and then we can support them. We can enable them to be the best they can be. But without that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very much so. And this is a really difficult concept to be able to put into practice today. And the
Yeah.
reason why is because a meeting I was at, the Gallup again was reporting in, and they were talking about the economy, global economy we have. They labeled it as inflection, and
Yeah.
inflection means bend. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
not severe depression or recession, but it's also not extraordinary
Yeah.
scale. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
bending. In the States, we're dealing with right now with the election cycle,
Of
which is
course.
causing
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of
Yeah.
what you guys are dealing with.
Yeah. Just been through it. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So
What's going to happen next? Are they going to implement those policies? And this morning they've just been talking about increasing tax already. So they found a black hole. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So you've got that going on. So there's an important part of a leader having this sense of self-confidence. You mentioned that earlier. Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.